Or something even similar that the DAC doesn't see a change,
Right. Sometimes the change that needs to occur in the DAC is small enough, it's fast.
And now from a customer's perspective, that's what he didn't understand, because as far as he's concerned, he's just going through tracks. We had a little bit of a troubleshooting conundrum recently. Customer bought a Lena stack and hooked it up to his home network, and he was using it for a few days, and he commented on how slow the track changes can occur sometimes. Other times it's fast, right? Change tracks, and I guess he was using Tidal. And anyway, this you got to wait to the end of this one, because it's actually kind of surprising. Didn't really think about what was going on there. So, as usual, because he's hooking this up to his home network, the first thing we do is point to the network and go, what do you got? What are you using for a network? Because almost everybody knows that if they've been down this road before, right? If you're not hardwired, who knows?
There could be uncertainty.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, if it's plugged in, it's like, well, that's probably not it.
Well, this being one of the worst issues to troubleshoot, because it sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. And since you're not physically there and you're troubleshooting with somebody that's unfamiliar over email, well, it's challenging, right? Because they're telling you information that sometimes is relevant, sometimes isn't. Sometimes they're telling you things that you receive incorrectly and is as a result is misleading.
Without having eyes on the system,
difficult.
You got to drag all that information out, and it tends to be quite a lengthy process, because you never know. Some people have some weird shit in networks.
Yes. So let's use this as a thought experiment. Let's see if people out there could figure it out.
Yeah, right. So, so the first thing is, all right, how are you using this in your network type thing? Like, well, I got it plugged into this, with a cat cable, and I got he was running Rune too, so he had a Rune nucleus, which further complicated the whole thing. So I'm like, okay, well, it could be the Rune too. I don't know. So what's this? What first question was, what's all this stuff connected to in the network? So it turns out he's running something called, I forget what it was, but it was a mesh network.
Yeah.
And it had a bunch of little, basically Wi-Fi units all over the house. He had more than one. I don't know how many.
Yeah.
And connecting to one hub, they call it, or whatever, and which is the router for that system. All going to a Verizon fiber run, which he showed me the speeds, clocked in at over 900 megabytes.
Yeah. Right.
Speed wasn't an issue on his ISP.
Bandwidth wasn't an issue.
Bandwidth, right, that too. So bottom line is, so he figured because he had that, he was good as gold, and that delays shouldn't be occurring. So that's the customer's thought process, which I get. Yeah. I would think the same thing. It's not me.
And moreover, he was running it before without a delay.
Right. Before he got this, he had a bar talk, and he was running it, and he didn't notice the delays. So now he switches to a different network server, basically. I'm sorry, a different network DAC.
I mean, you would think, because, they're both the same company. Why should it be any different, right?
Yeah.
But it's a classic setup. Something was working. You change something and it's not working, you always blame the new hardware.
Yeah. I mean, it was working. It was playing music. It just, sometimes there were delays when you sit there and just change tracks, which not many people do that. But if you do it constantly, you notice that some songs were...
It'd be annoying.
Some songs were almost right away.
Yeah.
Some songs were a few seconds. Some songs were 5-6 seconds. So it was a variable. All right. So anyway, right. So everyone, DCS, ourselves, everyone's pointing to the network first, going, well, what's going on, right? So we clear that up. Have the customer get a really long network cable so he can reach the Verizon unit itself.
Bypass the network.
Whole thing, right? And then get us. I mean, this stuff is $40-$50 total on Amazon for a switch and a 150-foot Cat 6. It's easy enough to do if you don't have the cable, or go to Best Buy and get it. Anyway, he plugs that all in, and it's better, but it still has delays. It's like, okay, well, I'm thinking, well, I seem to recall us having delays when we use this stuff too, but I only remember it at a show setting. I don't remember it at home. So anyway, bottom line is that wiped out. So then we said, okay, well, what about the nucleus? How are you using that? How's that plugged? We go through the whole thing, right? Because we got to figure out what's the bottleneck here.
Yeah, well, clearly something changed, right?
Yeah, So then he threw another amount. Says, well, he says, well, when I was using the bar talk before I got the Lena, I had a USB cable coming out of the room nucleus directly to the Bartok. So I'm like, oh. Now, I don't know how these two pieces interact. I had to find that out myself, but come to find out that, and we should have known this because we've used it both ways.
Right.
But basically, the Roon nucleus, the black box that you plug in your house and it gives you interface for Roon, right, is basically a PC in a box. It's a computer. It's running whatever on a Linux custom software or whatever, but it boots like a computer, runs like a computer. You just don't know it. There's no screen.
Right.
It just does what it does, right? It just turns on its own. Has issues like computers. Bottom line, it's a computer, right? So turns out that we know from when we use laptops or a laptop, say, any computer, plugging into a DAC, whether it be a network or not, when you run it USB, the computer, via software or whatever, has a fixed data rate going out, regardless of the track you're playing. Doesn't matter what track, it dumps it down to one data rate, whatever it decides is, whatever you set it for.
You could set it, yeah.
For the DAC, right?
It typically does not auto switch. And see, this is this trouble. Not everything always behaves like this, but frequently a lot of computers won't do that. They'll pick something and they'll run it. So nothing will change as you're changing tracks. And a lot of times it may even be always permanently connected. So what ended up happening here, the big reveal, was how we had it connected. The DAC was switching to accommodate the changes in the sample rate of the track coming in. Because how he was streaming it, the content is different, and content is often quite variable. So you might go to one track and it's 16-bit 44.1, another one's 24-bit 192, and your DAC needs to be able to switch to accommodate that. And sometimes there's multiple changes that need to occur, so it can create variability where sometimes there's no delay if track to track they're the same data rate.
Or something even similar that the DAC doesn't see a change,
Right. Sometimes the change that needs to occur in the DAC is small enough, it's fast.
And now from a customer's perspective, that's what he didn't understand, because as far as he's concerned, he's just going through tracks.
Right.
It's just he's not the type that's looking at a display and watching every time he changes track what speed he's getting, right? He's not like that. He just
Oh, I do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's ultimately how I figured out what was going down here, because I did it at home. I'm like, well, I never really sat there plowing through tracks to see what the hell the thing does.
Well, it also depends on what you're listening to. Because if you're just listening to Redbook, it wouldn't matter, right? If it's all CDs or something, it wouldn't matter. Yeah. But now with like online streaming, all kinds of formats, it's just next track.
Well, that's what clued me in, was the fact that I picked an album, a studio album, went through all the tracks on the album. There was no real delays, because the whole album's one speed. It's all one data rate.
Right. Yeah, but if you're going through a playlist,
right, or a mix, which is all different. Everyone's almost guaranteed is not the same data rate. So, and depending on what the DAC's got to set up to play it. And I mean, you think about it, these DACs, these are high-end DACs. They're designed strictly for high sound quality. They're not designed for speed. It's not a PC that's running into a 50-cent D to A chip. You know what I mean? This is the D to A chip in a computer. The whole thing is a D to A chip. It's complicated. And it's got these, like the Linux DAC's got an external clock. It's got two clocks in the external clock. So it's got to look at the data, look at the track, decide what rate it's running at, change the clock input to match the timing of that rate. And I don't know what the hell else it's setting up, but you hear some things clicking on the inside. I think that's the changing of the clock input. But anyway, all that takes time. And then it's got a buffer, so it's buffering for I don't know how many seconds. It's buffering into memory, this track. All this takes time. And then when you combine that with potential delays in a mesh network, because you don't know what the network's doing at the same time. You could have 6 kids on phones playing games on the mesh, and you don't know how it's prioritizing the data.
Sometimes you get a lot of uncertainty, and that's sort of the trouble, where it seems like something's wrong because the variability. Sometimes it's instant, sometimes it's 2 seconds, sometimes it's 5 seconds. And unfortunately, almost every DAC does this. It's very common for them to have some sort of switching delays, especially when you're changing between formats. And I'm not really sure. I don't make DACs, so I'm not really sure the technical reasons for that. But it'd be interesting to see if you could reduce or
I
eliminate
think
it.
what I think I would determine is that the more complicated the D to A conversion system, the longer it's taking. And of course, at this price point, they don't want you to hear clicks and pops, noise
Right.
of any
Yeah.
kind.
Needs to mute.
It comes on and it's just music,
Yeah.
and it sounds the same the first second as it does the last. So it's
They're prioritizing sound quality.
yeah. So
Yep.
it's making sure that everything's right, and then it's unmuting itself and playing. And I think that's really where it comes from, And but yeah. So anyway, that was tricky because it ultimately wound up being the variability of the data rates that he had going when he changed to a network.
Well, that is the problem, because you're like, he could have been through a track, one album and not think anything of it. It's like, oh, it's working fine now. Then go to a different album or different playlist and
Yeah.
oh, it came back and we got
Well,
the
it's
problem
music,
again,
right?
right? Yeah,
Like
it's
it-
like
what
it's
do you
still
care?
playing.
Right.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
Music, right? But
Yeah.
you may not be aware, since most apps don't even tell you. There could be big differences in the formats, the bit rates, the data rates, sample bit rates, and stuff like that of different tracks. And your DAC is there to accommodate that and switch between them. And a lot of times on cheap gear, it's instant or nearly enough, and you don't notice it. But it's exceptionally common on external discrete DACs to have a delay. And I guess it's both good and bad. It can be annoying sometimes, but I never heard a pop from external DACs except in unusual circumstances where they're obviously
We've heard all kinds of
non-conformant.
noises at shows and stuff. I mean, it
Yeah, but sometimes you get weird issues like
Yeah.
that. But it's
usually computer related.
it's very uncommon to see it on like a actual production DAC.
Yeah.
Whereas on computers, I've heard that changing tracks. Sometimes you get pops and stuff like that on
Well,
computers.
particularly people are running, for example, all kinds of software like out of Honor and stuff, because a standard
Yeah.
computer won't play probably beyond 96K or so sample. I don't think it won't play 192, won't play DSD. So where this does. So this has got to negotiate all those formats. When you think about all the formats that when I was doing this the other night, I'm looking at the speed, the data rates, all these tracks.
Yeah.
Holy shit! It's 1644.1. You got 2444.1. You got
48.
2448.
88.
You got
96,
2480. You
yeah.
got 2496. You got 24192. You got 352. You got some of them are 32 bit.
Yeah, there's a few different formats
and
too.
DSD if you're using Rune and it's got a hold of a music library in the house. So this thing's negotiating and setting clock speeds and all that external just for each track. But in Rune, you just see a simple interface. What do you want to play?
Right.
So you don't know what it's doing.
Well, actually, it does have the little thing you hit, and it shows you exactly what it's doing, and I like that. It shows you every chain, every
Yeah.
conversion. It's
which,
pretty nice.
Which you could probably turn off, right?
Well, yeah, you got to actually select it.
Yeah. See,
But
some
yeah.
people don't. So I could see some people not caring or bothering them. Or
Well, a lot of people probably wouldn't configure it. They don't look into it.
yeah.
Most people, whatever the defaults are,
If
that's what
works,
it is,
if
right?
It's playing music. It's
playing
working.
music.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't look into it past that.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah, that was tricky because ultimately we're blaming the network and all that stuff. And the reality of it is it's just normal operation. And what the confusing part was at one point it was working. And that's the part we didn't know, is that when the nucleus is hardwired with a USB, it is putting out what we should think that it is. It's a computer. It's putting out PCM out the USB at a fixed data rate. So it's never changing no matter what track you're on, right? But as soon as you don't use that on the nucleus, and the nucleus is strictly networked, now the nucleus no longer is the source of the stream. It shifts to a Rune-ready device. The DAC starts
endpoint,
streaming. It's
yeah.
doing the streaming, not the Rune box is simply an interface now at this point. It's not doing the work. So that was the other trick that kind of threw us because we just didn't go through this before.
Well, it's kind of one of those is it plugged in problems.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's sort of obvious in hindsight, but
yeah.
inevitably with the data you have, it's always a little confusing.
Yeah, so hopefully with this video, we'll save a lot of service calls and stuff with people. Network DACs are becoming more and more popular. We're seeing them at all price points now. So and I'm sure they all got delays because of the way they operate. Some more than others.
Well, that was the biggest thing, though, is that most people probably wouldn't be coming from like a Bartok. So he already was like experienced with the brand and everything, so he assumed it would just operate the same.
Right.
And there's where the problem came in, right?
Yeah. It's always that word assume. Always when it comes to things that
Right.
things that go wrong.
Well, that's exactly why you would never ask a person, is it plugged in?
Yeah.
Because you assume, well, of course it's plugged in.
Yeah, right.
But it happens. It actually happens.
Yeah.
The outlet's dead. The cable's broken. It's not plugged in.
That
things
happened
like
to him
that.
a couple weeks ago.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
It happens. There's a lot of reasons
I
for
forget
it.
what you were doing, but you were doing something and you accidentally bumped the cable and the plug
Right.
kind of came
Well,
out
yeah,
the wall.
worse yet, it's plugged
Yeah,
in,
it
but
was
not
plugged
fully
in.
seated.
Yeah, but it fell out.
And it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
how come this damn thing isn't
Yeah.
turning on?
You got
And
to
I'm
jam the
Well,
plug
you
in.
look,
like, I
it is
come over, I'm
plugged in.
like, that plug's hanging out the wall.
It's not plugged in.
Yeah, stupid.
partially
Classic.
plugged in.
Hence the reason I asked this question. When you call computer tech
Right.
support at Dell, isn't that the first question you
That
ask?
it is.
It should be.
Is it plugged in?
They do
Yeah,
ask
but the
that.
question doesn't fix it, though, because a lot of people will just be like, of course it's plugged in, but they don't actually
You
check.
didn't look,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, actually, no. One time I called the cable company, and they told me it's like, no, physically go and look. They tell you that now because people probably just say,
you
of
spend an
course it's
hour
plugged in.
and
It's like-
then they check, oh, it wasn't plugged in.
they're like, I'm gonna wait here for
Ah.
10 seconds. You go look.
Yeah, right,
I'm like, okay.
right. It
Yeah.
definitely is. Definitely is. Now, my email
Classic one.
chain did not start like that, but yeah.
But in this case, I did know what the problem was. It was I just moved in, and it was disconnected at the pole, so there's nothing I could do about it.
Yeah.
So, you
No,
know.
that's a serious disconnect.
Yeah.
But there you have it.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, we saved a lot of troubleshooting necessities. Going
Saved
forward.
maybe 2 people
Yeah.
over the next
Few,
5
yeah,
years.
The 2 that are watching here at the end.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Wait, it was 3 last time, right?
Yeah.
Let's make it 4
Maybe
now.
4.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Maybe 5. This
I don't know
was-
didn't
about
know
that.
that,
That's
yeah.
too
This
much.
this was a nail biter.
5 people aren't watching right now.
This was a nail biter.
No way.
Thanks everyone for watching. Thumbs us up. Take care.